I think I started having anxiety about the idea of being a parent when I was 16.
This is Joe Wong. Welcome to the Trap Set, where each week we explore the lives of drummers. I want to play something for you. You're hearing Illuminant by Quicksand, featuring my guest, Alan Cage on drums. Formed in 1990 in New York City, Quicksand drew inspiration from the energy of their native hardcore scene and introduced an element of complexity, ushering in an influential new strain of heavy music. Alan's dexterous groove imbued the band's angular compositions with a massive sense of gravity. Quicksand ended its initial run in 1995 and reformed in 2012. In the intervening years, Alan performed with bands such as Seaweed and worked as a labor organizer. I spoke to him in downtown Los Angeles. And now my conversation with Alan Cage.
My father installed floors, like carpet and tile and stuff. My mother was a nurse.
My mom's a nurse too.
Yeah?
I think that they're
What type?
very special people. She was an ER nurse for most of the time that I was growing up.
Yeah.
And
My
now
aunt's
she
an
works
ER
in an
nurse.
urgent care. What about your mom?
She worked, she started, like she was I guess a nurse's aide initially and then went to school to become a LPN and she worked at a nursing home. With like people with dementia, I'm like the hardest job, I think.
Yeah, my dad lives in a nursing home,
Yeah.
and he had a stroke years ago, and it sucks. Those places are terrible. Even like the nice ones are very, very depressing.
I feel like they've gotten worse over the years. I mean, what she said is that like when she started, I guess, in the early 70s, and it was, a much nicer place for people to be, I think. I think as the money gets tighter, they're trying to make more
Yeah,
profit.
I mean, there's these giant conglomerates that run these places, and they're pinching pennies where they can.
Yeah,
And
when she started, it was like her place was a family, like pretty much a family-run operation.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, she said that once it, kind of got taken over, it was all about bean counters and every penny.
I think another issue is that people just live longer now, so there might be less money to support, care for older people.
Yeah. She worked the night. She did the overnight though. They would like see each other at the door sometimes.
So as a kid, was that hard on you? Was your mom sleeping all day, or was she like sleeping while you were at school and then you could hang out?
Well, I mean, she didn't sleep all that much, to be honest. I don't know how she did it. She would sleep when we were at school, I guess, but she would sleep through drum playing. She would sleep through anything.
Wow, that's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
What was the first album that you bought?
The first album I bought
Yeah.
I don't know.
Kiss?
No, the first album I think purchased for me was a Kiss record. I think my father went out and asked my cousin or something what he should get me, and he bought me Kiss Alive 1, I think. Or no, before that I think I had the Beach Boys, Good Vibrations, but I left it on the dashboard of a car and it melted. Yeah, I got to listen to it a few times. But I don't, with my own money, I don't know. Me and my friends I think we started really early stealing records before we ever purchased records.
Oh, okay. So were you a bad kid?
I don't think so. No, I mean, I don't know.
Did you do other fucked up, like weird stuff when you were a kid besides just stealing records?
I mean, it was, like the 70s, late 70s.
It was like the time of
this late 70s in suburbs
Yeah.
with like very little parental supervision and boredom. So I felt like it was pretty status quo. It wasn't really, I don't think I was an outlier.
What kind of records would you steal?
I remember going like to the record store and looking for bands that's name I thought I'd be interested in the music by the name.
Yeah. Or the pictures.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember sometimes it was a real hit, like Killing Joke or something. And sometimes I was like, this is not what I expected at all. And I just get home and think like Nazareth or something. I was like, I was expecting heavy like Black Sabbath or something. And yeah.
And when did you start playing?
Pots and pans, like oldest memories, like just always tapping on stuff and trying to make beats.
So you were always a drummer.
I don't, we'd play Kiss in the garage, with like tennis rackets or like whatever, and I remember you switch, you had to you kind of had to bid on which part you wanted to play. Mm-hmm. But I think, for me, it was, I don't think guitar seemed like, learning a language. Like there was a prerequisites, you had to learn some basic chords or something. Drums, you could just start.
Yeah, there isn't as steep of a barrier of entry.
Yeah, I love that. It's if you can put the tiniest thing together, you're making a beat.
When did you get your first drum kit?
I guess I was maybe 11, 10, 12, somewhere in that range. I think I had a snare drum first. First a drum pad.
Yes.
I think I went to you did band in grade school.
Yeah.
So you got one of those little Remo.
Yes, I had
drum
one
pads.
of those.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think my mom, she would just like save up money. I got a lot of boxes with drums drawn on the bottom initially, this is coming to you. At Christmas kind of thing.
Wow, that's awesome.
Way. Yeah. But she saved. I think, it was hard. Drums weren't cheap then. But I think I had a snare drum first, the pad, the snare drum, and then she got me this. I still have it. It's like it's the only drum set I have from, real vintage drum set is an old Slingerland kit.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's what you've always used, or that's just something?
No, I have Ludwig gave me some drums now, so I use, new drums that you can get parts for and stuff. But I played it a lot. I mean, I don't know how many shows got played on that thing. I always kept it, and always it's kind of a favorite.
Did you have ambitions to do anything else
besides play music?
Yeah.
No, none.
Now, growing up on Long Island, did you know anybody that was a professional musician? Did it seem possible, or did it seem like professional musicians were from outer space?
Outer space.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it just felt totally unobtainable.
So, how did you make it happen? What was your plan?
I didn't have one, but I think for, to a large extent, hardcore music opened that door. It was just wait a minute, you don't need anybody's permission to make a record or to go on tour. You just go and do it. And there's a built-in kind of infrastructure almost, of that stuff. And that just opened up everything for me.
How did you discover hardcore?
I don't remember really. I mean, I had a...
You stole a Black Flag record?
No. I mean, I kind of early on, I mean, I had a friend who had an older brother. So I found punk, he was like, what are you guys listening to? Throwing records over his shoulder, try this, and hands you whatever, the Clash record or a Ramones record. Mm-hmm. So, and I think I saw some shows. There was a university right by where I grew up, and I saw some shows accidentally. I saw the Ramones probably was in the 7th grade, and I just thought this is the greatest thing ever.
Which one was by you? Stony Brook?
Yeah, and I think maybe the earliest kind of hardcore or hardcore-esque show, it was the Nihilistics and the False Prophets, just playing a bar at Stony Brook University. We were I don't know, 14 or something, sneaking around the university, and I don't think I really understood what it was. I just thought it was crazy.
And when you saw the Ramones, how old were you? 13 or something?
Yeah, I got 7th grade probably.
And it totally blew your mind.
Yeah, but it didn't turn me I never became a punk. I just thought this is crazy. People are rolling around on top of each other, and the music is just bombastic, and it just it seemed super free and wonderful, but it didn't make me think I got to be a punk.
I also feel the difference between what you're talking about with the DIY hardcore scene and the Ramones is that the Ramones were punk, but they were also kind of rock stars. In a certain way, they were as otherworldly as Kiss to me. Like, in the sense that they had like a very tight aesthetic and they seemed like out of reach, at least when I was a kid. Whereas like the hardcore thing, it was like people just putting out their own records with no labels sometimes,
and often no
scenes.
talent too. Like I think most punk stuff that you would hear that got heard widely, they were talented people.
They were really good songwriters and great musicians.
But like anybody could make a hardcore band. You wouldn't necessarily be the most popular hardcore band, but you could get shows.
Right. Like if you listen to, say, like Richard Hell's band, they were all fucking fantastic players that probably grew up playing fusion or something and then just aesthetically made a choice. Or like Blondie, like amazing players. Whereas with lots of the hardcore stuff, it was just like all attitude. But I think that was very empowering to, it's just like, all right, we're getting rid of the requirement of virtuosity, and it's like, what idea do you have? Like, spit it out. Come on.
And I just, for me, I think, I don't think I ever really even though I was kind of around that scene and, playing in bands that were definitely hardcore bands, I don't think I identified as, a hardcore kid or any, I just thought I like music. Yeah. And this is a way that you don't have to ask anybody's permission to play music. You don't have to ask permission to make a record. You just do it.
Yeah. So after high school, what was your next step?
Moving out of Long Island.
Did you move into the city right away? And did you go to college?
I didn't do well enough in high school to like apply to a kind. I don't think it was in my plan, but I think what I did is I took a couple of non-matriculated courses at Hunter or something, and I think inevitably I'd get halfway through and go on tour and just not complete the course.
So you were already
of like not complete.
Well, you were already touring by the time you were 18.
I don't know about I don't think I was doing full tours, but we'd go and do 3 weeks or
did
you mostly East Coast and stuff.
Did you meet the Quicksand guys on the island or in the city when you moved in?
Tom, the guitar player, grew up in the town next to me, and I met him going to hardcore shows. Probably at I think I gave him a ride home from probably a Bad Brain show or something. We had a mutual friend. Yeah. And he was like, hey, this guy lives near you. Can you give him a lift? And it was like a painful drive back out to Long Island at night after a show. But so I knew him, and I played in a band with him prior to Quicksand. Played in a hardcore band with him.
What band was that?
It was called Beyond.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. And the other guys I just, met through, playing shows before Quicksand. I knew both of them, not super well, but we knew who each other were, and we talked.
So you moved into the city at age 18. Like, what were you doing to support yourself during that time?
Mostly I think pretty much everybody I knew were like working at health food stores or restaurants, that kind of stuff.
Coffee shops.
Yeah, I worked at a couple of health food stores. And
did you get
I did deliveries food? at a vegetarian restaurant.
Which one?
It was Angelica's.
Okay.
On 12th Street. I think it just recently closed, actually.
Yeah, I heard, like last year or something like that.
Yeah.
And where were you living, on the Lower East Side?
I had a lot of apartments. It was like when I think about how often I moved, like compared to now, the idea. Remember the first time I moved into an apartment, they wanted us to sign a year lease. And I just thought, that's crazy. How would you know where you're going to be in a year? How could you commit to that? Yeah. And now the idea of like moving, anytime within a decade, it just seems so painful, like packing up. And
it stresses me out just to think about it.
Yeah, but I think
back then you probably didn't have that much stuff to move.
Nothing, next to nothing. But I think my first apartment was in Jackson Heights, and then we had like
good Indian food.
Not then.
Oh yeah,
no,
okay.
It was Colombian then.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, and most of Queens, it's really a huge demographic change since Queens is, I think, the most interesting borough now.
Did you feel like your style as a drummer was fully formed at that point?
I hope not. I mean, maybe I don't think I gave it much thought, but now I've been playing a lot more lately, and I'm hoping I'm like, wow, I think, you can just learn new things. You can,
Yeah.
but it was pretty foreign. I think it's pretty foreign. Like, I feel like style, like the essence of that kind of thing in my mind is formed pretty early on, like in the first few years of doing something. I think you start to, if you're going to have a real distinct identity, you're probably going to get it then.
Yeah, I would say that, when I first heard that band years ago, you guys were lumped in with the New York hardcore scene, but it felt like the drumming was very different from what I would have associated with that scene. It felt like you were drawing from something else.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it wasn't drawing drum style. I don't think from hardcore.
Who was influencing you at the time?
I don't know. At the time, I mean, I learned. I mean, I'm sure that there was. When I was young, just picking up drums, it was John Bonham and Stuart Copeland and Sly Dunbar. Like those three. I remember just intensely listening to what they did and how they played. But I think getting into hardcore and playing in a hardcore band, I'm sure I listened to the best drummers in that scene. Mackie was in the scene. Like listening to the Bad Brains or the Cro-Mags. They had real players in their band that and you just learn the things you need to know. Like, this is a blast beat, or they call them mosh beats or whatever. I'm like, all right, I got that one. But yeah.
Did it feel like you had a special chemistry with the guys in Quicksand that you hadn't experienced before, musically?
Yeah, definitely.
Can you remember the first time you played together?
No.
When do you feel like? Was there a time when you felt like the band kind of gelled and you felt like, oh, we have something here. This is a vehicle into the world.
Yeah, pretty early on. I think we did a lot. We did a lot really quickly with very little, kind of like very little music out. I think I'm sure we booked a show before we had any songs, kind of thing. We just and then we threw together 3 songs, and I think we booked flights to go play in England because somebody was willing to book the shows, and started playing around the Northeast. And I think pretty early I was like, this is great. I want to do this and make it my primary thing.
And were the tours pretty much like DIY style tours at first, sleeping on floors and that kind of a thing?
Yeah.
Was it fun?
Yeah. It's got.
When you're young, it's fun, right?
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, I think in some ways it's the funnest. Those are the funnest times playing music. They're like the most trying as well. So,
yeah.
But those are the ones when I think back and remember, like, that was just a blast. It was always something like that.
This episode of The Trap Set is brought to you in part by Collectivo Coffee. Handmade coffee since 1993. Check them out online at collectivo.com.
We did an album on a major label, and they gave us a grip of cash, and we were touring all year. I think we played like probably 320 shows or something in that year, and that was it for 10 years or so.
How was the reality of that? How did that compare to what your dream was?
I don't know. I don't know what my dream. I really. I just want to. I was happy to be playing music.
Mm-hmm. Did it ever feel?
I felt it was difficult when it got like. I always found that the way that music and art, or any kind of art, and money intersect is problematic and can suck some of the joy out of it.
How did that manifest in your case?
I guess doing things, and you're always wondering, like, is this what we'd be doing if we weren't getting paid for it? If would we be making the same choices if it was purely based on what do we want to do this month? But I mean, I remember thinking of a metaphor kind of early on that being in a band with a group of people and also kind of it's also your living is like owning a car with a group of people, sharing a car, and you're trying to you got the car's only going to go to one place, but everybody's got their opinion of where it should go, and it's like this constant negotiation.
Yeah.
About
That's a great metaphor. I always thought about it like being in a polygamous marriage.
Yeah, I mean, right, exactly. It's like being married to a bunch of people who you're not intimate in that way with, but have the same kinds of
like. Hopefully, the music
can
bind you together in the same way that, like, in a sexual relationship, you can get a release in that way. But I
mean, there's definitely something. I think people wouldn't do it if there wasn't, they wouldn't.
That joy wasn't there.
If there wasn't something really wonderful and joyful about playing music with a group of people.
Although sometimes, I mean, I guess there are some cases where people start making so much money where,
yeah, of course,
like what you were talking about before, when commerce and art intersect. I can think of some examples of people that are in, like, say, classic rock bands that are just making so much money, but they don't even talk to each other and they don't even travel in the same airplane.
I mean, I guess it's anymore. Like any job. Yeah. If you're, you can get locked in.
Yeah.
And I imagine it doesn't really matter how much money they're making. It matters maybe as much how much money they're spending or how much money they owe or do they need the next paycheck?
Right.
And yeah, that always seemed depressing to me, to like that you'd be stuck playing or doing anything that you really don't want to be doing anymore.
I also think that after a certain point, it becomes your identity, and so then you're just it takes an extra amount of courage to say, well, okay, maybe I'm not Fleetwood Mac. Maybe maybe I can just be a person and try something else.
I think now I've been thinking a lot about how I think it's like maybe also as much a sign of the times, the identity politics around, like, kind of the tribalism around music.
Yeah.
That when I think young people don't quite have it in the same way. It's like it's music, and their identity isn't formed by that exclusively.
Or at least it's not a signifier of their identity like it was for us.
Right.
And I've talked about that with other people, but I feel like, when recorded music was actually a valued commodity that you had to go out and purchase, then those decisions meant more.
Just finding the particular music. I mean, for me, like that was...
Yeah, just knowing about a certain band said something about you, like that you're the type of person that would seek out that band. So yeah, I would say now it's just like post musical identity, where it's just the younger kids can pull something from the Bad Brains and they can pull something from Britney Spears and make a record on their phone, and that's what it is, for better or worse.
Yeah, I think it's probably some of each, but there's a real difference in the investment it takes to just get that information.
Yeah.
To even be able to form an identity around something. I mean, I feel like these days if you want to get into a particular music form, you can do in one night, just moving along through the algorithm suggestions.
Yeah.
What would have taken you 10 years to do.
Yeah, I think
in
about
the past,
like the snarky guy at the record store.
Yeah, they're gone because you just thanks. I'll look that up.
Where it was just like, oh, I hope he doesn't make fun of me for buying this record, or like I remember having that thought in my head, like, all right, I'm buying a Minute Maid record. I hope this guy doesn't think I'm a dork that I don't already have this record, or that kind of thing.
But I feel like people with encyclopedic music knowledge, it doesn't have the same value as it's like once typing fast was really important.
Exactly.
And
sure.
Bemoaning that things aren't the way they were, especially with art, just seems like that's a real dead end, kind of.
Well, it's also it's always happened.
Yeah, of course it has to. Otherwise, it would just be a dead art form. Things have to move on.
Well, also, what I'm saying is people have always bemoaned it. It's just part of human nature. I mean,
Well, you mentioned people who are making a living doing it. Like, it's, of course, if
Yeah,
you're an
that's-
elevator operator and then the elevator becomes automatic,
Sure.
you're bemoaning that you don't no longer have a job. And I think if you have a job that doesn't exist anymore, it's not going to be an easy pill to swallow, especially if you worked really hard to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think the difference between, say, being an elevator operator and being a studio drummer is, I think that there's an element of self that people put into being a studio drummer that perhaps that you don't necessarily have to put into being an elevator operator or a buggy driver or whatever other kind of
Or a drummer in a hardcore band.
exactly. I mean, I think that it's called, it's a dead art. It's not a dead craft.
I don't know if I think it's not a dead art or a dead craft. It might just be a dead job.
Yeah, a dead
You know
job.
what I mean? I think those, anybody who played on tracks at that level,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's people lining up that would love them to play tracks on their stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know that they have the ability or the will to pay them.
Yeah.
And certainly not what they once paid them.
Or what they're perhaps worth,
Yeah. Again, that's, it's hard to.
Yeah.
But I get where, I mean, I'd be bummed if I had, a pretty sweet job that kind of started, and that I'd worked really hard to be able to do it.
Well, I think about all the great jazz musicians, especially the people in New York that were just playing at the highest possible level.
And they never got paid.
Or some of them did, and then they stopped getting paid. And to me, those people are like poets in a language that nobody speaks anymore, or that it takes effort to learn. Like, it's like, the Iliad and the Odyssey are undoubtedly classics that inform every piece of literature that has been produced in the Western world after it.
But no one speaks ancient Greek, so
Society has moved on to a different place where people aren't connecting to that on an emotional level anymore, in the way that it used to. And that's just inevitable to a certain extent.
I mean, for me, like, it comes back a little bit to the whole intersection of commerce and, making things.
Yeah.
And the pure art of making things. And, it's nice to be able to make money doing what you love, but it's pretty liberating. When I see people who made music or art or wrote whatever they did, whatever they created, and they had no hope, there was no ambition about making money off of it. Mm-hmm. It just seems, and sometimes they accidentally do. Sometimes they don't expect it, but it seems to me that that's where the purest art is made. When it's because you're not thinking about who might buy it.
Yeah, perhaps. But I also think that, I think to a certain extent you're right, but I also think that part of being an artist is actually putting it out into the world, even if it's not to make money. But like, I think you do have to take that final step and put it out there. Like, I don't subscribe to the kind of academic notion that artists, the like pure artists, like are doing it just for art's sake and they're like sequestered off in the lab somewhere and it's all about the process and not about the end result. To me, it's like, yeah, that's part of it, but then also like putting it out there and making yourself vulnerable to be, to see how the world interacts with it is also equally as important.
I think both. I mean, I think either one is valid, right?
Yeah.
There's been great art made by people like, what's that guy down in D.C. who built that thing in his storage shed that sits in the Smithsonian now.
Oh yeah.
And there's a ton of people like that, and I think that's real art. But I think a big part of why people make art or music or whatever, is to connect with other people.
Yeah.
You got to make yourself vulnerable if you want to do that. Mm-hmm. But I don't know that those two things are synonymous with
money.
Money.
Yeah.
I think there's people who want to, I think people have made art where they were trying to connect with a finite group of people, was their greatest hope. And they never thought, wow, I can make a living off of this. And I think that takes away an element that sometimes makes it more difficult to just think you're making what you want to make.
Well, okay, so knowing this is the way that your thought process works, what went into the decision to sign with a major label when you guys were approached?
Money and and reaching more people, both things.
So was there any kind of mental dissonance in your head at the time?
Yeah, right from the start. Like I said, it was, it felt like, it's compromising in a way.
Were you worried that you would be perceived as selling out, or that you would even think of yourself that way?
No. No. I
So it
mean,
was
like I
more
said, I
just
didn't
like-
really have an identity as a punk or a hardcore
yeah.
kid. For me, it was just music, and I knew that existed, but I didn't care.
So it was more about giving away some degree of control.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're taking money and you're expected to deliver a product to another outside entity.
That, and to be honest, what you said about making yourself vulnerable and putting wanting to connect with people, you put it out there. I think that it wasn't so cut and dry in my mind. I thought like, yeah, the more you do that, the more that happens, and the more accolades you get from people, it just gets confused. Like, am I making? I think for me, I think the best art's made when you're making it primarily for yourself and hoping that other people connect with it, as opposed to trying to figure out. And I think once you have an established audience, it's really easy to get into the game of, well, what are they expecting? And trying to make what
even
you think they want.
subconsciously.
Yeah, exactly. And that always, I think, for me was a struggle of like, ideally not like, I would like to not do that, but.
Well, let me ask you this: like, how difficult historically has it been for you to make art that you like?
I mean, that's a complex question, because I think it's one of the things as a drummer. I play some guitar, and I contribute riffs, and we write music together. Every band I think I've ever played in does that to some extent. But I really can't write complete songs of my own that I think are good.
Sure, but
so I feel like I'm always
consider yourself an artist in the capacity of a drummer? Like within the context of, say, Quicksand, do you think of yourself as an artist, or are you there to service somebody else's vision?
I don't know that I would say artist seems a little, I don't know, maybe pretentious for a drummer to me. I feel like I'm creative. I think I play a creative role. Although lately I'm thinking, God, I love playing drums so much lately, and it's kind of a new thing for me again, playing drums every day.
Yeah. And
wanting to, learn new things and get better at it. And I thought, well, I'd love to take a crack at giving somebody just my best, square effort to give a songwriter what they want, and not take it as my, as my own.
That's liberating. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like not give it up in place of playing with bands where you're a creative person in the band, but I would love to try the other approaches as well.
But coming back to my question about how often you're making something that you like, so that even if we're not, I'm not saying just historically, like you mentioned that the ambition is to make something that you can stand behind and then hope other people come along.
Yeah.
So how often have you been able to achieve that for yourself? Like, are you
almost always?
So
I don't think I haven't really, I don't think ever been on a record that I wasn't proud of, at least to some extent, that I thought wasn't good for what it was.
Yeah. So you're not like so mean to yourself that you can't enjoy hearing yourself back.
Well, I mean, I'm not mean to myself at all, and I think my evaluation of most of this, I'm glad I did that. It's good. I'm not embarrassed of it. There's always things you could do better, but I don't enjoy listening to it.
Okay.
I never did. Like for me, it's kind of over at when you get the mixes to where you want. I think it's just because you live with it so much, and it's also not somebody communicating to me. Like when I listen to music, I want to feel like somebody's communicating with me.
You don't want to hear yourself talking to yourself.
It just doesn't do the same thing for me. It's like telling yourself a joke or something. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I don't know. There's that rare thing where you think of something funny and make yourself laugh.
Yeah.
But
and I think I know people that love listening to their own music, and I think it's perfectly valid.
I think that's cool.
It's
but
fun.
I would say most people that I've talked to, even people that are ultra successful, can't listen to themselves back. I think that's just a human quality.
I mean, I think you're like, to me, that playing, a lot of it is that you're communicating, and it's not completely, it's not a circle. You're communicating in a direction.
Yeah,
you're pushing
and
it out.
I'll say even like for the first 50 to 70 episodes of this thing that I did, it was grating to me to even hear it back when my editor would send me a cut and be like, what do you think of this? I couldn't even listen to my own voice, even though it's like I see this as primarily a platform to, for someone else's story.
Thanks for reminding me of that, because I hate the sound of my own voice. And I never, like the interviews with the band interviews, anytime I can, I always skip them.
Well, you don't have to listen to this back.
Yeah,
man.
I don't, right? I could just ask somebody how it was.
But maybe you can wait 10 years
Yeah.
or 20 years. and then see if you've become wiser in the intervening time.
Right. You would hope.
The Trap Set will always be available for free, but we rely on donations from our listeners. Please visit our website at thetrapset.net and click donate. Subscribe to our show on iTunes, and if you enjoy what you hear, give us a review.
When Quicksand was signed to a major label and you guys were putting out records and building an audience, it actually kind of, at least my perception from the outside is that, you were making relatively uncompromising music and also, reaching a pretty large audience for the type of music it was. You weren't pop stars, but you were a functional band going out there and making a living doing it.
Yeah.
So at the time, did it feel great, or was there other stuff going on?
It did, but I think I was like, I'm still don't know, like, did I want to be a pop star? Like, I have friends who are in, similar backgrounds who wound up in really big bands. And I always kind of wondered, like, I thought, like, nah, I wouldn't want to be, maybe that would be overwhelming to be in a band that popular, but it'd be nice to have the money, something like that. But in hindsight, I don't know, I wonder if I'm doing revisionist history sometimes. I'll think to myself, well, then that's all I would have done. And, and maybe I, would have settled on, well, I'll play some music here and there, but I'm kind of set for life. And for me, I don't know. I like to think that it made me go out and try different things and try, live a life in a different way for a while, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily say that that's revisionist history. It's basically just that you were dealt a certain hand and you played it the best way you could, right?
Well, when I say revisionist history, I mean because it's hard to know exactly what you were thinking and how honest you were being with yourself. And part of that, maybe it was a little bit influenced by being around hardcore for, a good chunk of time and thinking, like, do I really, I know I always wanted, when I was a kid, the bands I would see big rock bands like Led Zeppelin and think, like, that's what I want to do. And at some point,
did you see Led Zeppelin live?
No. But
okay.
I think actually, if I remember correctly, I think me and my friends were going to buy tickets, like, how Ticketmaster used to be at the mall. Mm-hmm.
Ticketron?
Yeah, or Ticketron, maybe it was. But I think they were playing, so, scheduled to play. Again, my memory is pretty bad, but I feel like they were scheduled to play when John Bonham died.
Oh, okay.
And that was like I was just at the age where I could probably go to see a concert by myself.
So the initial run of Quicksand was about 10 years, right?
I don't think it was even that long.
Okay.
It was probably like 8 years, something like that.
And what
seems so short now.
Yeah, it did, but it was so monumental and like kind of
when
like
it's your 20s,
in your life.
Yeah, that's a big chunk of time.
Well, also it made an impact and it made a name for you. Why did you guys break up that first time?
I think it was probably a combination of tons and tons of shows and being in this space together and just getting worn down and tired. And that, I think that back to that vehicle thing, like people want to be doing different things.
Yeah, everybody wants to break out onto a motorcycle for a while.
I mean, in hindsight, the thing, I think the thing I learned from that, and if, not to say it's a regret, but if I had to do over again, it's something about youth that you just, and your, like, again, identity around being in a band or being in a particular band. I don't know why, people feel the need to, break up and make some big public announcement. Like, just play the music or don't play the music. Go out and do a tour, make a new album or don't make a new album, and go do the stuff that you feel like and then, you have the option to come back together without any big fanfare and do a new record when you feel like it. I can only speak for myself, but for me, I think it was a combination of a few things. Like one being that, and it also affects not like I wish if I could go back again, I would play music with more people.
Yeah.
But there was something about maybe it was the time and how people perceived their own identity was I'm in this band, I'm this drummer from this band, and I really I have some friends now like jazz players and stuff, and they play with hundreds of people, and it doesn't affect who they are. I wish I was in a place where I was getting out there and playing with more people and not making
like a monogamous commitment to a band.
Yeah, or feeling that if we weren't going to play together in the next year that we needed to just never play together again or just break it up, who cares? Just if you feel like doing something else, go do something else and just communicate well, what your kind of
I will say that it
boundaries
probably
are on
raised
stuff.
the stakes to be a band and say, okay, this is it. We're in this like all for one for all. It probably raised the emotional stakes of it, and you're channeling all of your creative energy into this one thing, and that's a conscious decision.
Yeah, that's a point.
And it's whereas jazz musicians, it's more about like speaking a common language so that you can play with anybody. Lots of the same material, and then something new can happen every night, and that's a different discipline.
But there were also people within our scene in our world who were able to move. Through be simultaneously in different projects, and maybe it took some, a little bit of communication and to manage people's expectations. Hopefully you let people know what kind of time commitment you can make.
But anyway, when you got out of the metaphorical car, what was your next step?
I just went out and toured again with another band pretty quickly, and just did that. And made a record with them.
Which band?
Seaweed.
Yes.
We had toured together. Like we had done, I think the first Warped Tour together, and then they came out and opened a tour that we played. And I don't know, I was probably home like 3 weeks, and they were in town, and they said, "Would you come out?"
Were they a Seattle band?
Tacoma.
Got it. Yeah.
The big city. Yeah, and so I toured with them for, I don't know, probably the better part of that year, and then we made a record together. Mm-hmm. That like I never, like I said, I never really listened back once it's done, but I just heard it recently.
That's pretty good.
I loved it. I was like,
was that on Sub Pop? That record?
It was on Merge.
Oh, that one was on Merge.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
But I was pleasantly surprised at. I really think I was like, wow, this is one of my favorite records I've played on.
Did you ever do anything else? Like, did you get another job or try to break away from the touring life?
Yeah, I mean, I think I did that for a while, and then I think I went on some kind of like year-long. I just had money saved up, and I think I was going through some stuff in my life, and just went and traveled the world for a year, just with the intent of spending down every last penny of rock savings.
Yeah,
which it was pretty successful at doing.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
Right down to the last penny.
Great. Why was that the intention? Just to give yourself a blank slate? Maybe,
yeah. I mean, I wanted to see the world too. I wanted to put myself in uncomfortable, places that wasn't as comfortable. But I think I came back from that. I remember just kind of feeling panicky about, I think maybe, being in my 30s and not having any marketable skills and no healthcare and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, I'm going to give one last shot at playing music before I at least prove to myself I can do something else. I think I wound up in LA for the better part of a year playing with a bunch of different people, but LA just wasn't for me. There was something about the pace and the way people approached music that it was people I knew.
The flakier pace, was it slower?
I don't know, but I don't want to say flaky, but it's definitely slower. And something about the people I was playing music with, for the most part, I think were waiting for a record deal and to be big in a big band. And they were playing in other bands that were successful. I think wanted to be doing their own things. And it was something about the waiting. I just said, I want to go out and play. We got to go play shows. And if nobody wants to put your record out, then you put your record out.
Right.
And though I couldn't deal with the waiting.
That attitude of externalizing your own agency. Yes. Yeah.
I didn't like it. So I just went back to New York, and I think I was broke and was, I think, nervous that I was going to wind up, kind of, had imagined myself like sitting in the Bronx in a, one room apartment eating like stewed tomatoes out of a can or something. And I got to do something. So I got a job doing something, that I thought I would do for a year. I did labor organizing. So, helping people at a job who wanted to form a union do it.
How did you learn how to do that?
There. They just taught me.
Do you feel like
I came from like a working class background.
Yeah,
my mom
yeah.
was like a delegate in her union, and my aunt was a union organizer. So it was like, the girlfriend I had at the time was like a total red diaper baby, and she was like, you could, if you need a job, they need organizers. Just apply. You'll probably get a job. And I got a job, the first one I applied for.
I thought
I'd do it for a year, and I did it for 10 though.
Oh, you're still doing it?
No, that was, over 10. It was 15 years. I probably stopped 5 years ago. Kind of coincided exactly with the phone call from Sergio. Called me up and said, "Hey, would you play this? We're thinking about playing 4 songs together.
Okay.
Would you do it?" And I think it might have been, it was like, synchronicity. It was like the day after I quit. I was just burnt out, quit the job.
That's weird.
And I got a call saying, "Do you want to play?"
Do you think that was some sort of like cosmic instinct?
Maybe, who knows? I don't know.
Do you have any kind of spiritual beliefs?
No,
Yeah.
I'm an atheist for sure.
Going back to this this labor organizing job, I've found that lots of people that kind of grew up in the DIY scene or just as musicians in general actually do develop marketable skills. I mean, just around the logistics of being in a band. And I wonder if that was useful going into that job.
I mean, it was like I had to sit down. I didn't know how to use a computer. It was, I guess it was like 1999 or 2000, something like that, maybe 2001. But I had never had a computer. Didn't have, I didn't think I had skills, but then I had to sit down and write a resume. My roommate at the time helped me out, and I just, faked the whole thing full of, use like, well, I've tour managed,
Yeah.
like I know how to, I've, done settlements.
Yeah.
Like gotten paid. We've kept
Merchandising.
Yeah. Like whatever you can put on, it totally worked. And they were more, they were good skills.
I mean, I actually think that's one of the hardest jobs. Like being in a band is one of the hardest things to do. Like just like to make a living making music is very hard.
Yeah.
So you do develop skills aside from playing music most of the time.
Well, and organizing, like that. I mean, the main thing about that job, is being able to communicate to people, being able to figure out how, with all sorts of different people, how to be able to get them to trust you and, believe in what you're saying.
And during the time that you were working as a labor organizer, were you playing much?
I was playing, a friend would ask me if I, and usually it depended on how appealing like a tour, sounded, like Europe in the spring,
Right.
going to
Yeah,
South
sure.
America and it's only 2 weeks and that kind of stuff. I'd take a leave of absence. I did a few, maybe 3 or 4 things over that like 8-year period. I think I made 1 record and I think what I stopped doing though was just playing. A part of it is I just saw your drum kit in the other room. And I'm so envious because it's a negotiation just to play electric drums in a New York apartment building that has wood floors with no concrete in it. And I think I just I stopped playing and for the joy of playing drums and getting better. And at some point I think I may have stopped doing that even long before then, and just recently started picking it back up again, and it feels great. Again, back to it's just pure joy. Like I don't really have there's no aspirations in it right now. It's just playing music for the sake of playing music. And if we make money on tour, that's great. But I no longer feel like it's the only thing I can do. and I'm not in a place in my life where I just, I need to be. I'm not stuck in that position where I feel like I need to be playing music to make money.
Yeah.
I can stay home with my family and make money. But it's like it's actually the opposite now. It used to be where all I wanted to do was be on tour, and it was nice that we got to play music while we were on tour. But now I just think, God, if I could just hyperspace to the playing part and just sleep, get home with my family at night, it'd be great.
When did you start a family?
My son's turning 5 the day after tomorrow.
One kid?
One kid, yeah.
Was there any anxiety about becoming a parent and being an artist?
I think I started having anxiety about the idea of being a parent when I was 16.
Really?
Yeah.
Why when you were 16? That's when you started having sex?
Just like stereotypical kind of, brooding teenager stuff where I just, thought I just didn't think, I couldn't imagine a world that, a kid, I'd want somebody I love so much to grow up in.
Sure.
And I mean, it's kind of, it's not too far
Welcome
from that.
Welcome to the
I remember just feeling is it a responsible thing to do? Somebody to bring a kid into the world. And I think I just made the decision, I make a lot of decisions in my life. It's kind of a cop out. I just, was with somebody I wanted to be with. And I thought, she wants to have a kid. What am I going to hold her back from something she's wanted to do her whole life? Mm-hmm. And, if she wants a kid, I'd be with her if she came with a kid. So it might as well be mine, that's kind of...
Yeah, the other thing that's interesting is I think about that argument, and I wonder, in my case, if it's a defense mechanism, the argument, well, the world is so fucked up. Is it responsible to bring someone in? Because I also think, part of the reason... part of having kids is it's an act of good faith that you're invested in this world, and that it's not the level of fucked upness is not completely out of your control, and that everybody can do something to make a difference.
Yeah, my friend who was a real red diaper baby gave me a long lecture about, if only the people who don't care are having kids,
Yeah, exactly.
We're doomed. But
I say that as somebody that doesn't have any kids.
Right. I knew that from your podcast.
Yeah.
In hindsight, though, I wonder how much of it. There's some of it's that, but in hindsight now, looking back, I think how much of that is really just about me and anxiety about, knowing you're going to love somebody that much, and that bad things. Everybody has bad things happen in their life, and
Sure.
it's when it's your, things that you find tragic in your own life magnified 100 times. Mm-hmm. The first time, I don't know, your kid just, wants to play with some other kid at the playground and gets rejected. It's just oh.
So it's making yourself even more emotionally vulnerable than signing to a major label.
A zillion times, yeah. It's nice. I think age puts a lot of the things that...
Wait, how old are you now?
Perspective, 49.
Okay, so you were 44 when the kid was born.
Mm-hmm. I remember that I remember she really wanted to have a kid, but she's 10 years younger than me. And, she asked me, and I said, yeah, okay, let's do it. And she asked me if I'd want to stay home with them. I said, of course. If we're able to do that, I definitely want to stay home with them. But then I thought, but we should get to this right away because I don't want to be a 70-year-old father of a,
So what does she do?
We met actually doing labor work. We were both organizers at the Hotel Workers Union in New York, and she does related work now, policy work, mostly around scheduling rights, fair work week stuff, but legislating it locally instead of getting it through a union contract.
Basically, the way that your life is structured now is that you stay home with your son most of the time when she's at work, and then you get to go on tour periodically?
Well, I started staying home with him when he was I think she went back to work after either 1 month, maybe a month, I think, or it might have been 2 months. And the first few years were, the first 3 years were super intense, and I was home with him all the time, and she works a ton. But then he started doing, we did a little preschool co-op with some friends, and so we get I'd started getting hours, and it coincided. I think the first Quicksand thing we did was she was pregnant actually. The first tour we did. So and then it was another 3 years, and I probably had something to do with it. Like I really couldn't have gone on tour then. And now he's going to school. He goes to kindergarten next year. So I feel like I'm really burning to play music, not only with Quicksand, but I'm like out there, looking to play with other people and really kind of pursuing that more.
And you said that you're, just playing drums for the joy of playing drums.
Yeah.
And what does it mean to get better to you? I mean, you said that you're working on getting better. So what does it mean to be a better drummer?
I always think of it in terms of like, the movie The Karate Kid. I wish somebody had explained this to me. I would have been more interested in like drum lessons as a kid. If they had said like, it's basically, you don't have to do all the tricks, but it's like a toolbox of things that allow you to express yourself. Like, I think getting better means that you can actually execute more of what you hear in your head. Mm-hmm. Like I think something, and especially I noticed when when we started doing this again, I initially didn't really do any playing or practicing outside of just getting together with them and playing the songs. And I thought, oh yeah, I don't really need to, even polish up that much to be able to get through these shows without anybody hearing a difference in, the way I'm playing the songs. But, I'm not learning anything new. I'm not like doing anything new that way. And there's something nice about just being when you feel like you'd like to play something. I feel if you're not playing every day, you're not going to be able to do those things. Mm-hmm. And just learning different styles. I grew up, knowing that like there's other types of music out there and learning some of it. But now like I'll just every day do I know how to play a songo?
Yeah.
Like, and you can just, the information's so easy now. You just YouTube it, and there's some like 22-year-old kid.
A 5-year-old kid.
Yeah. Like here's what you need to know in your Berkeley audition or something,
Yeah.
And it just, you can sit in your comfort of your home learning to play all sorts of different styles.
Is there anybody that we haven't touched on yet that you would want to hear?
I saw Abe from the Deftones last night, and
did you tell him you were doing this?
The guy Chris did. He said, "Oh, he's doing this show. That you ever hear that podcast?" He said, "Yeah, I heard it." And
Abe gave us money early on.
He's a fascinating human being. All those guys are kind of, but he and I have
been in touch over email, but I don't know him. So I'll have to reach out again.
I'll call him.
Yeah,
you can call him after this. I'm sure. Like if you had him on, it will be entertaining. They're entertaining people.
Well, yeah. I mean, I remember early on. We did maybe our 10th episode with Dale Crover of Melvin's.
Yeah,
and
another great drummer.
I remember getting Abe donated a bunch of money after that episode came out, and he was like really excited that somebody had interviewed Dale.
It's funny, and he didn't mention it. He doesn't mention that. Like I see him last night. He's at our show last night, and this Chris mentioned that I was doing this thing. And I said, "Have you?" And Chris said, "You haven't done it?" And he said, "No." And he's such a humble guy. Like I said, "You should definitely do it."
Yeah.
And he didn't mention that he had given money.
Well, and then I was like, "Oh, you should come on." And he's like, "Yeah, for sure." And I wonder if he was just. I was wondering, like early on, I was like, "Well, maybe he doesn't want to do it because we're too small time for him." But then after a while, we got credible.
No, I've known him a long time. I'd be really surprised if that was a reason.
A humility thing.
Maybe, it could be that.
Anyway, great. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
Alan.
man. Thanks for having me.
The Trap Set is produced by me, Joe Wong, along with Chris Karwowski, who also edits the program. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Trap Set, and visit our website, thetrapset.net, to subscribe to our show for free. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please donate to our show. If you can't afford to donate, please tell a friend and give us a good rating on iTunes. Send your feedback and guest requests to thetrapset@gmail.com.